Hi, it's Lauren. Welcome back to my craft room. Thank you for joining me today. I have a video with some Halloween inspiration as it's the last day of the month, and I'm getting back into sharing some fun Halloween ideas. I have three shape dies. These are build and layer decorative die sets from scrapbook.com. It's Ghost, Haunted House, and Trick or Treat. I also have a bunch of smooth cardstock A2 paper packs that I die cut all of my different images out of, as well as some leftover of my Cloud Whip Plus Lost Shadow distress spray. So I created that in a previous video, and this was just some extra mixed media paste that I had just swiped onto a piece of cardstock, and I die cut my clouds out of it. I just thought it would add a little bit more texture to my card. So I'm going to start with layering together the Haunted House Build and Layer Decorative die set. I'm also going to be using some alcohol markers just to add in some more detail to my die cut images. I wanted to have a little bit more dimension and texture to my images other than just die cut out with paper, which you can absolutely do. You definitely don't need to add more to these dies. These die cuts turn out really awesome all on their own, but if you want to add a little bit more to them, definitely grab some markers or some, whatever your favorite coloring medium is. I prefer alcohol markers, and I'm using Ohuhu art markers, and I'm just going to add some shadow. So I added a little bit of yellow inside all of my haunted house windows, so it looks like there's a little bit more of a shadow, more dimension within the house. Now I'm adding on the third layer of this haunted house die. So the back one is yellow, the next layer is black, and then the third layer are all of those little gray outline pieces. And I'm also going to grab a gray alcohol marker and add in some shadow and dimension to that layer. So there's my little haunted house. I'm not going to do anything with the moon or the clouds, my bats, my fence. Those are just some extra pieces that I will add in to my scene. I die cut the word boo, so the shadow part of the boo is that same lost shadow and cloud whip mixed together, and then I die cut the word out of some glitter cardstock. This is from the rainbow glitter paper pad, and I use the orange color because Halloween. So now I'm going to start gluing together my cute little ghost from the Ghost Build and Layer Decorative die set. I am going to just glue on the band of the hat, like your little cute little ribbon around the hat and this little star. And then I will also glue together the hat onto the ghost, its big eye cutouts, and then the little pumpkin treat bag and the little hands that are holding the treat bag and the cute little ghost feet sticking out. So I love that it's so easy to put these together. I know that there are some other layering die sets out there. I've done a few videos with Tim Holtz and Sizzix and their color eyes, and as amazing as they are, I know they can be really intimidating because there are so many pieces. And they do make marvelous, marvelous images. Like, I absolutely love the trick or treaters from last year's release with the cute, I think it was last year, maybe it was the year before. I think it was 2 Halloweens ago of the little monsters. They are just so cute, and I love that die set. So, if you are wanting some layering dies, but not yet ready to jump into the level of the colorized dies from Sizzix and Tim Holtz, you can definitely start with these. I think these are pretty straightforward. I didn't want to skip too much of my video, so I'm going to be just kind of chit-chatting as I glue all these together, because I know that sometimes you need a little help to figure out how to order, the layers together. And so I'm going to go through them all. And I do have one mistake, I guess you could say, on my little girl trick-or-treater, which I'm going to do right after I finish my ghost here. And I'll explain that when I get there about which layer I should have glued down first. So just like my haunted house, I'm grabbing some alcohol markers, and I have a purple, green, and orange, and I'm just adding shadow. I'm not bringing out different shades. I'm literally just relying on the color of my cardstock and just adding in a little bit of color with the markers. And now I was very daring, I know, to do this after I glued my images together. Could have slipped and marked up my pretty white ghost, but I luckily did pretty well and didn't need to fix anything or replace anything. But you can definitely do all of your coloring before you glue your images together. Kind of like what I'm going to do here. I'm going to add some skin color and hair color to the body and hair die cut pieces from the trick or treat set with this adorable little witch. So I die cut the hair and the body with the face out of some alcohol marker friendly cardstock from Hefty Doodle. And I'm using my art markers to create a skin tone. You can obviously cut it out in whatever color you want. I thought about doing green, like Elphaba, inspired, Wicked inspired, but I decided to go with skin tone. So I'm just using some of my skin tone color markers from Ohuhu and adding a face and a neck. And then I'm also going to do her little tiny itty bitty hands. So in order to help with holding those hands down while I color, I'm also going to have my little picker tool to keep them in place, and you'll see how I color them here. And then for the hair, I'm just going to do the same thing, but I'm going to use different shades of brown to color in her hair. So as I was saying, these dies I think are very easy and very customizable. So if you did die cut and you just wanted to make, you have a skin tone color that you want to just die cut your witch out of, you could do that. You could use, like I said, green or different colors. Or you could just leave it white like the sample image has, just for ease of minimal having to have papers to die cut all these images out of. But I do have a ton of the smooth paper packs, not only in A2 but in 6x8 and slimline as well. So I wanted to use some cardstock so that way I wouldn't have to color any of my papers other than the hair and the skin tone. And also, it makes it really easy to only add a little bit of shadow with your markers or favorite coloring medium because your cardstock is already one color. So all you need to do is kind of add in the shadows. And then I also will add in highlights with a white gel pen once I'm all done gluing all my images together. So I'm finishing up my hair here. I did kind of similar to my skin tone. I used 3 shades so that way I'd have a little bit of shadow and texture to the hair. And then I'm also going to color in the little bangs portion for the hair. This is the back side or the full part of my little witch's hair, and then she has these little bangs on the front. Okay, so now let's glue together my little witch. So this is where I'm going to recommend some changes other than what I did. I started with gluing the top of my witch, like her top and her arms. You should do the legs first. Do the black legs that are sitting there. Do those first. Then do the skirt and then do the top. That's my lesson learned here. When I was gluing these, I started from the top and worked my way down, and I didn't realize that it would have been easier the other way. So pants, skirt, top. And then I also have a cute little broom, so I'm going to tuck those under her arms before that glue dries. And then I will realize here that, oh, I should have done her pants, and now I can't peel off the skirt because the glue has already started to dry. So I'm just going to trim off what I can't glue down and just glue those legs down. Not a big deal. I mean, you can glue it however you'd like to. There's always a way to try to, fix it. But like I said, I did this in the opposite way. You should definitely do the legs, the skirt, and then the top. And then because I have a white background, I'm doing my very best to line up my colored die cuts perfectly onto that white background. It won't be totally perfect, and you'll see later I'm going to grab a black marker and just try to color the parts of my white that show. But I'm going to keep layering all the different pieces. I do use the packaging just to kind of help me with what goes where, which I think is really helpful that there's a full, image on the back of what the final product is supposed to look like. So that way I can make sure I'm putting it together in the way I'm supposed to or intended to, and that I'm not missing any pieces. I definitely recommend using some type of jewel picker as well as a little pokey tool for putting these together. There's such small little die cut images like her tiny little hands that wear a jewel picker with that kind of waxy, it's like sticky but not sticky, it's waxy end on it like I'm using here. This is a gift from my mom, so I don't know exactly where this came from or where you can get one. It has a jewel picker on one side and a pokey tool on the other, and it has cute little covers for it. It's rose gold and pink, and I love rose gold, so my mom gave it to me. So I'm just using, like I said, the jewel picker and my pokey tool to help move things around. I just think it's so much easier than using your fingers. If you don't have a jewel picker, I definitely recommend tweezers like I'm using here to help with adding the glue and then adding it to the images. So if you have fingers that get in the way or get super inky like mine usually do, having those tools are definitely helpful when gluing these types of die cuts together. I glued down my glasses on her little face first before I glued down the eyes, so that way I knew exactly where to put them without accidentally, completely covering the little eyes. I do like to glue the eyes a little bit. I don't want to say cross-eyed. They're not center in the glasses. They're a little bit more towards the nose. And I just feel like that makes it look like the character's looking at you more than it just looking outwards, like looking past you. I don't know if that makes sense, but I do like to glue the eyes when I have glasses like this a little more inwards than the center of the glasses die cut. And then finally, I have her little hat, and I will glue that behind her hair. And I did notice as I was taking photos of the card that I didn't get the hair quite perfect. It does line up perfectly with the skirt, and mine's a little tilted, which is not a big deal. But that was my only other thing that I did not notice as I was gluing her together. So I'm adding some final touches. I'm adding, again, using those alcohol markers to add a little bit of shadow to her hat, her broom, her glasses, her little, I was going to say leg warmers, but I think they're just supposed to be like details on her leggings and then on her skirt as well. I will also grab a warm gray, like one of the lightest ones I have, to add in a little bit of color to her cute little collar, which reminds me so much of Wednesday Adams. So her little collar, as well as my ghost. I didn't realize I didn't add any shadowing to my white sheet ghost. So um, when I get to the white or the warm grays, you'll see after I'm done. Here's where I'm doing the black ink to fix any white paper that's still showing. But I'm going to grab that warm gray after this, and I'm going to add some to my ghost. I wanted it to look like a sheet, I guess, like right, your little trick-or-treater in a sheet for a ghost. So I'm going to use the warm gray to add a little bit more texture to the folds and ripples of the bottom of my ghost. You'll see here I go up a little bit higher than the actual die cut, and I'm just doing that to try to create more of dimension and shadow with the sheet, like it looks like it's folding and pleating on itself. And then because it is a warm gray, I just grab my colorless blender, or I should say the lightest warm gray. I'm grabbing my colorless blender and I'm just blending that out so there isn't any sharp lines on my ghost and that it feels more of a softer shadow. I think that's all of my, oh, I'm going to add cheeks, of course. That's all of my coloring and gluing. So I'm going to grab my white gel pen next and I'm going to add some highlights. I'm going to fast forward through this part. You can look at my photos on my blog or Instagram or Facebook to see where I added the highlights. But This video already took 14 and a half minutes to get here, so I'm going to move on to actually building the card. So I have this extra background. I made this quite a while ago for a Simon Hurley release, and I just had some extra uh, in my stash of backgrounds, and I save a bunch of these extra backgrounds or extra inks and extra mixed media that I swipe onto scrap pieces of paper, and then I never use them because I'm like, I don't want to waste this. Let's set it aside and I'll use it later. And I've been just accumulating backgrounds. So I have been trying to use up more backgrounds, like for my Abigail lunch notes and for cards. So I grabbed this one. So this is using the Build a Plaid background stamp from Ranger Ink and Simon Hurley. I used some distress oxides on the stamp and then sprayed it. So I did kind of like um, I inked it a bunch of different times in different colors and sprayed it and then stamped it. So it has a watercolor effect. I will link the video. I'll put it right here in the upper hand corner of where you can see how I made this background. And then I added a layer of these different Halloween images. It's a stencil from scrapbook.com called Ghostly Treats. And I used some Crafter's Workshop Pearl White Stardust Butter. So it's very iridescent, very kind of see-through-y. So that way it didn't block any of the beautiful oranges and yellows of my background. I'm going to add my haunted house on a hill, but again, I really wanted this orange background. So instead of having a colored cardstock hill, I grabbed a piece of vellum and I die cut it with the nested A2 arches, the very largest size. So this is the A2 size. And after my stencil paste dried, I trimmed down my background to be slightly smaller than A2. So this is 4 by 5 1/4. And now I'm just working on layering all of my pieces on. So I have my little vellum hill. I glued my house down to the vellum. So right now I have my background so I know I can glue everything and it will fit on my card. But I just glued my house down to my vellum hill. I glued my little fences next to my house, and now I'm gluing in things for the background. So I glued down all of my clouds, my moon, here are my little bats, and now I'm going to add my sentiment, and it's overlapping my haunted house just a bit on that last O. So I'm going to just add some glue to that part of my sentiment, and forgive my hair. I'm trying my best to get it right to fit right on the edge of that card. So now that I have everything that's glued down to my haunted house and everything is going to look really nice and layered, I'm just using a little clip to keep my house and vellum in place while I trim the excess vellum down. I die cut my hill to be bigger than my background so that way I can make sure it was centered and it looked nice before I trimmed it. So now that my background is done and my layer on my vellum is all glued down, I'm going to use some foam adhesive. This is scrapbook.com's 2-inch roll that I just trimmed down to fit. So I glued my boo and my house and my vellum down to my background, and I added a couple extra pieces of foam adhesive behind the vellum where it will be overlapped by my trick-or-treaters. So I have my little witch and I have my cute little ghost. So there is 2 layers of dimension here. So the house and the hill is one pop-up of foam, and my 2 trick-or-treaters are a second pop-up of foam. And that's where I noticed that her hair kind of didn't actually meet her skirt, but that's okay. You can't tell. Luckily, it's a busy enough background. It's no big deal. You probably didn't even notice and like until I told you. So I added some super strong adhesive to the back side of my background, and I glued that to a top folding A2 card base. And now my vellum is still kind of loose on the edges, so I'm adding a little bit of glue and just tapping it with my finger and then pressing the vellum down. And I'm adding glue where I actually have a stenciled image, because that transparent kind of stardust butter, you can't tell that there's glue there. So it worked out really nice to have 2 little spots there on the corners of my card on the bottom that I could glue my vellum hill down to. So this is a final look at this adorable die cut card. There's absolutely no stamping. Everything is, well, I guess the background was stamped, but no stamping today. But I have my cute die cut images, some stenciling, and it's overall just, I think, a really adorable card using these dies from scrapbook.com. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you'll click like, and if you're new here, I hope you'll subscribe and come back. As always, you can find everything I use down below in the description box. Thank you and have a wonderful day. Bye!